r/pettyrevenge. My bestie stole my cheating ex, so I called cops on her. Meltdown. #chunk1. The first punch came through my car window at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because I just glanced at my phone, scrolling through Instagram while sitting in my parking garage, mentally preparing myself to go upstairs to my apartment. I was still in my work clothes, a blazer I'd worn 3 times that week, slacks that needed dry cleaning, shoes that had given me blisters by hour 4 of my shift. My brain was already mentally checking out, cycling through what frozen dinner I'd defrost, whether I had the emotional bandwidth to shower or if I was going straight to bed. Then, crack. Exploding glass. The deafening sound of my driver's side window shattering into 1,000 angry pieces. I screamed. My first instinct was pure adrenaline, hands flying up to protect my face, heart hammering so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Tiny cubes of safety glass rained down on my lap, my steering wheel, the center console. The cold autumn air rushed in through the gaping hole, and I was gasping like I'd been dumped in ice water. "You lying bitch." A voice, raw and slurred and absolutely unhinged. Female. Familiar in the way that a nightmare becomes familiar, that sick recognition that makes your stomach drop. I knew that voice. Through the broken window, I saw her, Madison Chin. My best friend since junior year of high school. 12 years of sleepovers and inside jokes and the kind of loyalty you're supposed to take to your grave. She was standing there in the parking garage wearing a white sundress that was now half soaked with what looked like red wine, her dark hair matted to her face, her makeup smeared into a Picasso painting of rage and despair. In her right hand, she was holding a crowbar. "Madison, what the—" I started, my voice shaking so badly I could barely push the words out. "Shut up," she screamed, and she swung the crowbar at my window again. The second blow took out what remained of the glass. "You think you can just call the cops on me? You think you can ruin my life?" My hands were shaking so violently I could barely grip my phone. I was reaching for it, fingers fumbling, when she lunged toward the window opening, that crowbar swinging like she was trying to demolish not my car but my entire existence. "Give him back," she shrieked. "Give him back, you thief." Madison, I don't have," I was stammering, pressing myself against the passenger door, trying to get as far away from her as physically possible while still being trapped in a 2-ton metal box. "Don't lie to me." Her voice broke into something that was halfway between a scream and a sob. "I know you've been texting him. I know you're trying to get him back. Well, guess what? He chose me. He's mine now, and you can't have him." The crowbar came down on my dashboard. The plastic cracked, splintered. She was actually trying to destroy the inside of my car. This was insane. This was a nightmare I was going to wake up from in 3, 2, 1. But I wasn't waking up. The cold air biting at my exposed skin was real. The taste of my own panic-induced adrenaline was real. Madison's unhinged screaming was absolutely, devastatingly real. "Get away from my car," I yelled, finding my voice underneath the terror. "Madison, get away." "Fuck you." She swung the crowbar at the windshield. A spiderweb of cracks erupted across the glass. "You selfish bitch. After everything I've done for you." Everything she'd done for me. The words hit like another punch. 3 weeks earlier, just 3 weeks, I'd found out that my boyfriend of 3 years, Derek, had been cheating on me. Not once. Not twice. But with at least 4 different women, one of whom he'd been seeing for almost the entire length of our relationship. I discovered it the way everyone discovers infidelity in 2024, through a conversation screenshot on Twitter that went viral because of how catastrophically stupid he'd been. I'd been in absolute freefall when I found out. That kind of devastation that makes it impossible to eat or sleep or form complete sentences. I'd called Madison crying so hard I couldn't breathe. She'd rushed over. She'd held me while I threw up. She'd stayed with me for 2 days straight, whispering that he didn't deserve me, that he was a coward and an asshole, that I was better off without him. She'd been my rock. Then, for days after Derek and I officially broke up, I saw the Instagram post. Madison and Derek. Cheek to cheek. Him looking happier than he'd ever looked with me. The caption, "Sometimes the best things in life are worth the wait," face blowing a kiss 2 hearts. I'd stared at that photo for so long I memorized every pixel. Then I called her, my voice so calm and hollow that I barely recognized it myself. "Did you sleep with him while we were together?" I'd asked. She denied it. Swore they'd only gotten together after the breakup, said it had been unexpected, that she hadn't been looking for it to happen but that Derek had reached out to her and they'd connected and she was sorry she hadn't told me first but she hoped I could understand. I could not understand. In the 3 weeks since that conversation, Madison had posted 17 pictures of her and Derek together. 17. She'd changed her Instagram bio to include a red heart emoji right next to his name. She'd started showing up at the coffee shop where I worked with her friends, laughing louder than necessary, positioning herself so I was guaranteed to see them. She'd been actively, deliberately rubbing my face in my own humiliation. And now she was in my parking garage at nearly midnight with a crowbar, completely intoxicated, destroying my car while screaming about me stealing him back. The crowbar swung again. This time, it caught the side mirror, smashing it clean off. That's when I realized I wasn't getting through to her with words. Madison wasn't operating in a realm where rational conversation was possible. She was in some kind of meltdown spiral, and she wasn't going to stop until either she broke everything I owned or someone made her stop. My hands were still shaking as I unlocked my phone and dialed 911. #chunk2. The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional, which somehow made everything feel more real and less real at the same time. 911, what's your emergency? My ex-friend, she's destroying my car, I gasped, watching as Madison circled to the back of my vehicle, the crowbar now aimed at my taillights. She's drunk and she has a weapon and I'm still in the car, I'm in my parking garage, she won't leave. Are you safe right now? Are you in immediate physical danger? That was the question, wasn't it? Madison hadn't tried to hit me directly. She'd gone for the car, for my property, for the physical manifestation of my independence. But that crowbar could change trajectory in a millisecond. One angry swing in the wrong direction and I'd be explaining to someone why my skull had a matching dent to my windshield. "I don't know," I said, and my voice cracked. "I think so? She's very angry. She's very drunk. What's your location?" I rattled off my address, my apartment building number, the parking garage level. The dispatcher was typing, asking me questions. Did I know the person attacking my car? Yes. Had she made threats? Yes, a lot of them. Did I have injuries? Not yet. Was she still at the scene? Yes, she was currently. Crash. My taillight exploded into red plastic confetti. Oh my god, I whispered. Oh my god, she's still going. Police are en route, the dispatcher said. Approximately 3 minutes. Can you exit the vehicle safely? I watched Madison circle back toward my driver's side window. Her dress was torn at the hem now, and there was a smear of blood on her forearm, whether it was from the glass or the crowbar, I couldn't tell. Her face was blotchy and contorted, tears streaming down her cheeks, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of something that wasn't rage or fear but almost pity. This was Madison. The girl who'd held my hair back in college when I'd had food poisoning. The girl who'd driven 3 hours in the middle of the night when my dad had a heart scare. The girl who'd been my person, the one I'd trusted with the kind of secrets you only tell in the dark when you're both vulnerable and honest. That flicker of pity died when she swung the crowbar at my side mirror again. I can try, I said to the dispatcher. But she's blocking my exit a little bit, and I don't want to get hit. Don't put yourself in danger. Stay in the vehicle. Officers are very close now. I could hear sirens in the distance, getting closer. Madison heard them too. Her head whipped up, that manic energy shifting into something different, something that looked almost like panic. No, she breathed. No, 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 no. She looked around the parking garage like she was suddenly realizing where she was, what she'd been doing. The crowbar dropped from her hand with a clang that echoed off the concrete walls. Her chest heaved as she stared at the destruction around her, my shattered windows, my destroyed mirror, my scarred dashboard visible through the gaping holes she'd created. Then her eyes met mine through the broken glass, and I saw the moment reality crashed back into her. The moment she realized what she'd done. She started, her voice hoarse. I didn't mean to. I was just so. The sirens were closer now. I could see the red and blue lights beginning to paint the garage walls in alternating colors. Madison's face crumpled. Her entire body seemed to collapse inward, and she wrapped her arms around herself. For a second, I thought she might actually break down completely, might sink to the ground and give up entirely. Instead, she bolted. Shit. I said, actual profanity, which I rarely used, but this seemed to warrant it. She's running. She's trying to leave the garage. Stay where you are, the dispatcher said calmly. Don't follow her. I wasn't planning to. I was still trapped in my car with a missing window and the engine off, shaking so badly that my teeth were chattering. I watched in my side mirror as Madison disappeared around the corner of the garage, the sound of her heels clicking against concrete growing fainter until the siren swallowed every other sound. 2 police cars came screeching into the garage less than 30 seconds later. Officers emerged, one heading immediately in the direction Madison had run, the other approaching my car with his hand on his belt. Ma'am? Are you okay? Are you hurt? The officer was young, maybe early 30s, with a kind of serious expression that only came from genuinely asking if someone was injured. I'm okay, I said, and when I looked down at my lap, I realized my hands were still shaking so violently that I could barely grip the phone. She was my best friend. I don't know what happened. She just showed up and started hitting my car. Can you step out of the vehicle? Carefully, watch the glass. I pushed open my door, and tiny cubes of safety glass cascaded to the concrete floor. My legs were unsteady as I climbed out, and the officer's partner, an older woman with gray streaked hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, appeared with a blanket and wrapped it around my shoulders without asking. When did this start? She asked, pulling out a small notebook. Maybe 5 minutes ago? I don't know exactly. I was sitting in my car when I gestured helplessly at the wreckage. When she started hitting things. Has she done this before? I shook my head. No. Never. She was drunk, and she was saying things about my ex-boyfriend, and she had a crowbar, and she just lost it. The female officer was writing things down, asking me to describe Madison, to explain the situation with the ex-boyfriend. I gave her my statement in a weird, detached voice, like I was narrating something that had happened to someone else. The sirens had attracted attention, lights were coming on in nearby apartment windows, faces peering out from balconies. My neighbors were witnessing all of this. Tomorrow, the story would already be spreading through the building. The male officer came back around the corner, shaking his head. She got to her car before we could cut her off. We have units looking for her now, but she's got a head start. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop even further. Madison knew where I lived. She knew my apartment number. She knew my work schedule because we'd used to grab lunch together. She knew my family's phone numbers and my parents' address. She was drunk, angry, betrayed by her own standards, and now she was in her car without a crowbar but possibly with access to one. She's not going to come back, the female officer said, and I realized I'd voiced my fear out loud. Not tonight. She knows we're looking for her now. But we do need you to file a formal report about the property damage and the assault. Assault. The word hung in the air between us. Madison had assaulted me. My best friend. My person. The girl who knew me better than anyone in the world. And somehow, that felt worse than anything the crowbar had actually done. #chunk3. The police took 2 hours to get my full statement. 2 hours of sitting in the lobby of my apartment building, because there's no way I was going back to my car or into my apartment alone, while officers documented every dent, every shattered piece of glass, every scratch on my paint job. They took photos. They took measurements. They asked me the same questions in slightly different ways, the way they were trained to do, looking for inconsistencies or lies. I didn't have any to give them. Everything I'd told them was true, and that was somehow the worst part. There was no misunderstanding to clear up, no miscommunication to resolve. Madison had shown up with a weapon and destroyed my property because she was angry about my ex-boyfriend. Because she'd chosen him over me, and now she was spiraling. We'll need to locate her for a statement, the female officer, Officer Chen, according to her nameplate, said as she closed her notebook. She may be charged with destruction of property, assault with a weapon depending on intent, and public disturbance. The fact that you were in the vehicle during the incident strengthens the case. Will she go to jail? I asked. I wasn't sure if I wanted the answer to be yes or no. That depends on several factors, Officer Chen said carefully. Her history, her BAC at the time, whether she cooperates. But yes, there's a possibility of jail time. After they left, I sat in the lobby for another 30 minutes, staring at nothing. My phone had been buzzing constantly, texts from my mom, she'd gotten a call from someone in the building, texts from coworkers, texts from actual acquaintances who I barely talked to but who'd apparently heard something through the grapevine. The only person who hadn't texted me was Trevor. Madison's boyfriend. My ex. The person who'd started this entire catastrophe by deciding that monogamy was just a suggestion and that betraying me with multiple women, including my best friend, was somehow acceptable. I couldn't decide if I wanted him to reach out or not. Around midnight, I finally forced myself to go back up to my apartment. I checked the locks 3 times. I checked the windows. I even looked under my bed, which was something I hadn't done since I was 8 years old and convinced there were monsters lurking in the dark. There weren't monsters under my bed. There was just dust and a phone charger I'd been looking for months ago. The monsters were the people I'd trusted. My apartment felt wrong. Every corner seemed to hold some memory of Madison, the couch where we'd watched terrible reality TV, the kitchen where we'd attempted to bake bread and created a flour disaster instead, the balcony where we'd sat at 2 a.m. talking about life and dreams and what we wanted our futures to look like. I hadn't asked for her future to include my ex-boyfriend. I ordered food that I couldn't eat, drank water that tasted like fear, and finally collapsed into bed at 2 a.m., still dressed, still jumping at every sound. My phone sat on my nightstand, face up, waiting for something I didn't want but somehow expected anyway. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. Most of them were from my mother, escalating in concern and then fury as she apparently realized what had happened. There were messages from my sister. From my dad. From my closest coworker, Jen, who'd somehow already heard a version of the story, and it was wrong. Apparently Madison had attacked the car with a crowbar while screaming about the ex, which, okay, was basically accurate, but the way some people were telling it made it sound like Madison had tried to drive her car into mine. The messages from my extended friend group were more complicated. Some were sympathetic. Some were asking for details. And a few that made my chest tight, were asking if I was sure about what had happened, if maybe I'd misunderstood, if maybe both of us were at fault. As if there was any possible scenario where destroying someone's car with a crowbar was a reasonable response to a romantic situation. I ignored most of them. I called my insurance company instead. Your comprehensive coverage should cover malicious damage, the representative said after putting me on hold twice. However, you'll need to provide a police report number for the claim. I had that, at least. Officer Chen had made sure of it. The estimate for the repairs came back that afternoon, delivered via email with photos attached. Seeing my car documented like a crime scene, because it was a crime scene, made something inside me crack a little. $12,000 in damages. My deductible was $500. Insurance would cover most of it, but there would be a rate increase. There would be consequences that would follow me for years, little financial reminders of the night Madison decided to destroy my property. Around 3 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. My heart dropped into my stomach. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then I remembered, Madison knew my number. She could call from a friend's phone. I didn't answer. The voicemail came through 2 minutes later. Not Madison. A woman's voice, professional and clipped. This is Linda Hartwell calling on behalf of Cascade Marketing Solutions. We're calling to inform you that Madison Chen is no longer employed with our organization, effective immediately. If you have any questions about this personnel matter, please contact our HR department. This call is to confirm that any employment references going forward should direct inquiries to our legal team. I played the voicemail 3 times. Madison had been fired. She'd lost her job because of last night. Because of the arrest record, because her employer had found out, because consequences were apparently a thing that actually existed in the real world. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt like justice was being served. Instead, I felt sick. Madison was struggling with alcohol, that much was clear from last night. Madison was unstable. Madison had made terrible choices, yes, but she was also someone I'd known for nearly a decade, and she just lost her job. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, and I almost didn't open it. Asterisk, it's my mom. Madison's mom. We need to talk, asterisk. I stared at that message for a long time. My therapist would later tell me that this moment, right here, reading this text, was when I had a choice. I could engage with Madison's family and potentially open myself up to guilt-tripping and manipulation. Or I could maintain my boundaries and protect my own peace. In the moment, I didn't think about any of that. All I could think was, Madison's mom had a right to be angry with me. I typed back, asterisk, I'm sorry about Madison's job, but I didn't tell her employer anything. I only called the police, asterisk. The response came within seconds, asterisk, you know what she's going through. You know she's struggling. And you had her arrested, asterisk. I stared at my phone, at this woman I'd known since high school, at Madison's mother who'd fed me countless times and driven us to concerts and been kind to me when my own mother was going through her divorce. She was destroying my car with a crowbar, I typed. What was I supposed to do? The 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, we need to talk about making this right. And that's when I realized, the revenge wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Because now Madison's family was involved, and my guilt was involved, and suddenly I had to figure out whether I'd done the right thing or if I'd taken things too far. #chunk4. I didn't respond to Madison's mom's text. Instead, I did something that probably wasn't healthy but felt necessary. I looked up Madison's arrest record online. It was public information. That's what made it so brutal. Madison Chen. Age 24. Arrested for destruction of property, public disturbance, assault with a weapon. Bail had been set at $2,500, which Madison's parents had apparently posted the same morning. The mugshot made my stomach hurt. She looked smaller in the photo than she did in real life, her eyes red-rimmed and unfocused, her hair matted on one side. She looked like someone who'd hit rock bottom and kept falling. I closed the browser. I didn't need to see that. But I couldn't unsee it either. My phone kept buzzing. Madison's mom, now texting from what I assumed was her own number, asterisk please. Just give me 20 minutes. We can talk about what happened. There might be a way to resolve this asterisk. Resolve this. As if there was some magical solution where Madison's car destruction could be undestroyed and her job unlost and my trust unbroken. I didn't respond. Instead, I texted Jen from work, asterisk can you grab lunch with me? I need to talk to someone who isn't family, asterisk. She responded within a minute, asterisk absolutely. Noon at the place, asterisk. The place was a small Thai restaurant near our office where we'd gotten lunch dozens of times. It felt normal. It felt like the world hadn't shifted on its axis. I needed that feeling desperately. Jen took one look at me and ordered me a pad thai and a Thai iced tea without asking what I wanted. You look like you haven't slept, she said, settling across from me in the booth. I slept, I said. It was terrible. Tell me everything that I don't already know, Jen said. And I do know quite a bit, because apparently this has become the most exciting thing that's happened in our office building since Derek got caught stealing from the break room fund. So I told her. Not just what happened with Madison, but everything. The cheating. The months of betrayal. The way Madison had pretended to be my friend while actively pursuing my boyfriend. The flaunting. The public humiliation. The rage I'd felt that had been building for weeks until it erupted the moment Madison showed up with a crowbar. Jen listened without interrupting, which is what I needed her to do. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, twirling her noodles around her fork. Madison's mom has been texting me, I said. She wants to meet. She wants to resolve this. I don't even know what that means. Does she want me to drop the charges? Because I can't do that, I literally didn't press the charges, the police did. Did you tell her that? Jen asked. I tried to text it, but it felt like she didn't understand. Or she understood but didn't care. Of course she didn't care, Jen said. Because in her mind, none of this is Madison's fault. Madison is struggling. Madison is going through something. Madison made a mistake. The actual destruction of your car is secondary to Madison's pain, apparently. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to say that. The job thing is eating me alive, I admitted. I didn't want her to get fired. I just wanted her to stop coming to my apartment with a crowbar. Those are two separate things, Jen said firmly. Her getting fired is a consequence of her own actions. If she hadn't shown up at your apartment destroying property while drunk, she wouldn't have gotten arrested. If she hadn't gotten arrested, her employer wouldn't have found out. You didn't do that. She did that. There's a chain of cause and effect, and Madison is at the beginning of that chain. But I called the police. Yes. Because there was someone destroying your property. That's what you're supposed to do. Jen leaned forward. Listen to me. I know you feel guilty. I can see it all over your face. But guilt and responsibility are not the same thing. You're not responsible for Madison's choices. You're not responsible for her alcohol problem. You're not responsible for her decision to pursue your ex-boyfriend. And you're definitely not responsible for her decision to show up at your apartment with a weapon. What if she's suicidal? The words came out before I could stop them. What if losing her job pushes her over the edge? Jen's expression softened. Then that would be a tragedy. But it would still not be your fault. And you know what else? You can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You can't sacrifice your own safety and sanity because you're worried about what Madison might do. I know she was right. I knew it logically. But logic doesn't stop guilt from taking root in your chest and growing like a weed. My phone rang while I was eating. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was a woman with a professional voice. A lawyer, she explained. She was representing Madison and her family, and she was calling to discuss a potential settlement regarding the damages to my vehicle and the circumstances surrounding the arrest. I almost dropped my phone. I'm sorry, a what? I said. A settlement, the lawyer repeated, as if I was the one being unreasonable. My clients are willing to cover the cost of your vehicle repairs in full, plus an additional amount for pain and suffering, in exchange for you agreeing to speak with the prosecutor about having the charges reduced or dismissed. I looked at Jen, who was making an aggressive face that clearly said don't you dare agree to that. I don't have the ability to dismiss charges, I said carefully, remembering what Officer Chen had told me. The state is pressing charges. I'm just a witness. Yes, well, if you're unwilling to cooperate with the prosecution, they may reconsider their case, the lawyer said smoothly. I'm sure they'd be interested to hear that you've had a change of heart about pursuing this matter. That's when I understood, Madison's family was trying to buy me off. I'm not going to talk to a prosecutor about having charges dismissed because I've been paid, I said, and I could hear my own voice getting harder. That's literally witness tampering or obstruction of justice or something. That's a very cynical interpretation, the lawyer began. I'm done, I said, and I hung up. My hands were shaking. Jen reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. That just confirmed everything, she said. That confirms they know what Madison did was wrong, and they're trying to make it go away with money. But what if? No, Jen said firmly. No what ifs. You did the right thing. You called the police when someone was destroying your property. That's it. That's the whole story. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that I hadn't made a terrible mistake, that I hadn't overreacted, that I wasn't responsible for Madison losing her job or potentially losing everything else. But as I walked back to my apartment that evening, my phone buzzed with another text from Madison's mom, asterisk we can make this go away if you cooperate. Please think about your friendship. Think about what we meant to you, asterisk. And I realized they weren't going to stop. Madison's family wasn't going to accept that their daughter had done something wrong. They were going to keep coming at me, from different angles, with different pressure tactics, until I either broke or gave in. The revenge wasn't over. It was accelerating. #Chunk5. The texts didn't stop. If anything, they multiplied. Madison's mom switched tactics. First came the emotional appeals, memories of sleepovers and birthday parties, screenshots of old photos of the three of us laughing together at various points in our friendship. Then came the practical arguments. Madison is in therapy now. She's getting help. Doesn't that matter to you? As if Madison's decision to finally seek help should somehow erase what she'd done. Then Madison herself started texting from a new number. Her messages were different from her mother's, rawer, more desperate. I know you hate me. I deserve it. But I've lost everything because of one mistake. My job, my apartment, my self-respect. Isn't that enough? I didn't respond to any of them. I'd learned that responding only encouraged more messages. By the following Wednesday, I started noticing things. Little things at first. Someone had keyed the paint on my car, not dramatically, like Madison had tried to do, but subtle scratches along the driver's side door. I almost convinced myself it was old damage I hadn't noticed before, until I ran my hand over it and felt the newness of the gouges. Then my apartment building's security footage went missing for a 12-hour window, allegedly a system malfunction, according to the building manager who seemed deeply uncomfortable when he told me about it. The day after that, I found a note slipped under my door. No signature, no identifying marks. Just typed text on white paper, you're ruining people's lives over a car. I hope it was worth it, I showed it to Jen. She immediately told me to file a report with the police. This is escalating, she said, and there was something in her voice I'd never heard before. Fear, maybe. Or anger on my behalf. This is beyond Madison's mom being annoying. This is harassment. Officer Chen took my statement about the scratched car and the note. She documented everything with the same calm professionalism she'd shown during the initial arrest. But when I mentioned that Madison's family had tried to bribe me, something shifted in her expression. They did what now? She asked. I explained about the lawyer's call. Officer Chen's jaw tightened. That's a serious accusation, she said. Can you provide the number the lawyer called from? I didn't have it. The call had come from an unknown number and I'd never written it down, but Officer Chen said she could potentially subpoena phone records if I wanted to file a formal complaint about witness intimidation. I didn't want to. I really didn't want to. But I was starting to realize I might not have a choice. Let me ask you something, Officer Chen said, leaning back in her chair. Do you want to pursue this, or are you getting tired of fighting? It was such a pointed question. Such an honest one. And I realized she was asking whether I was about to cave, whether I was about to tell her I wanted the whole thing to go away. I don't want to pursue anything, I said quietly. I just want my life back. I understand, Officer Chen said. But that's not really an option right now. Madison's family isn't going to let this go quietly. And based on what you're describing, the car damage, the notes, the bribery attempt, they're counting on you getting tired and backing down. That's the goal. They're going to keep escalating until you do. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Officer Chen had said. About the goal being to wear me down. About the fact that giving in wasn't actually a path back to my old life, it would just be trading my current nightmare for a different one. My phone rang at 2 a.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but some perverse part of me needed to know what fresh hell was coming. Hello? I said into the darkness. There was breathing on the other end. Heavy, deliberate breathing. Then a voice I almost didn't recognize, Madison's, but rougher somehow. Damaged. I wanted to kill myself, she said flatly. I sat in my car in a parking garage and I thought about driving into a concrete pillar. Did you know that? Did you know that your precious justice almost killed someone? My stomach dropped. Madison. I'm not going to, she continued, her words slurring slightly. She was drunk again. Because that would be too easy. That would let you off the hook. You'd get to be the victim of a tragedy instead of the villain of my story. And I know how much you love being the victim. Madison, if you're having thoughts of... I'm not, she snapped. I'm just telling you what you caused. I'm telling you what your revenge cost. My mom's paying for a private lawyer to fight this because our insurance won't cover the arrest, and do you know what that's doing to her? Do you know how much that costs? She's taking a second mortgage on the house. Our house. The house where I grew up. All because you decided you needed justice. I should have hung up. I know I should have hung up. But I stayed on the line, listening to her voice crack and fracture. You got what you wanted, Madison said. You got your revenge. I lost my job. I lost my boyfriend. Well, I never really had him, did I? I lost my reputation. I lost my friends. I lost my dignity. When does it end? How much pain do I have to be in before you feel satisfied? The question hung in the silence between us. Madison, I said, and my voice sounded small and broken in the darkness of my bedroom. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted you to stop. Well, I've stopped, she said bitterly. I've stopped everything. I don't leave my apartment. I don't answer calls. I barely eat. My therapist is worried about me, which is hilarious because my therapist is someone my mom is paying for with money she doesn't have because I destroyed your car while drunk on a revenge rampage you somehow don't feel responsible for. You destroyed my car, I said, and I was surprised by how angry I sounded. You came to my apartment with a crowbar. You threatened me. You scared me. You did that, Madison. Not me. I didn't make you do that. No, she agreed. But you made the choice to call the police. You could have just let me go. You could have just let it be. But instead, you pressed charges and you destroyed my entire life. I didn't press charges, I said for what felt like the millionth time. The state did. I was just the witness. Semantics, Madison spat. The line went dead. She'd hung up. I sat in the darkness, my heart pounding, and realized something. Madison was right about one thing. This wasn't going to end because I'd called the police. This was going to end when someone finally broke, and I was starting to feel like it might be me. #chunk6. I called Jen before the sun came up. She answered on the second ring, which meant she was either still awake or had been sleeping lightly, waiting for something bad to happen. Maybe she'd known I would call. She called me, I said without preamble. Madison. At 2 in the morning. She was drunk and she was, God, Jen, she said she almost drove into a concrete pillar. Okay, Jen said carefully. But she didn't. She said my mom is taking out a second mortgage on the house. On the house where she grew up. Because Madison got arrested. That's not your responsibility, Jen said, and there was steel in her voice. Listen to me. That is not your responsibility. Madison's family made their choices, just like Madison made hers. But the thing was, I couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Chen, Madison's mother, not the police officer, taking out a second mortgage. I couldn't stop imagining her sitting at the kitchen table with a loan officer, explaining why she needed to borrow more money on a house she'd probably already paid most of the way down. I couldn't stop thinking about the house itself, the one where Madison and I had spent half our teenage years, where her mom had made us brownies and let us stay up late watching movies, where I'd felt like I had a second family. Had felt. Past tense. Before all of this. There's something else, Jen said slowly. I wasn't going to tell you until I was sure, but. But what? My stomach was already tensing in anticipation. My roommate's boyfriend works at the courthouse. He mentioned that Madison's family filed a countersuit. Against you, specifically. They're claiming emotional distress and defamation. They're saying you fabricated or exaggerated the property damage to justify calling the police, and that your actions have caused measurable harm to Madison's mental health and financial stability. I sat up in bed, my chest suddenly tight. Can they even do that? Technically, yes. Whether they have a case is another question. But it means lawyers, and it means depositions, and it means this isn't over. It means it's about to get much more complicated. Oh my God, I whispered. You need to call your own lawyer, Jen continued. Like, today. Don't wait. Get ahead of this. I spent the morning making calls. The lawyer I'd consulted with after Madison's arrest was expensive but came highly recommended. His name was David Park, and when I finally got him on the phone around 10 a.m., he listened to the entire situation without interrupting. Here's the thing, he said when I finished. The countersuit is almost certainly frivolous. Emotional distress claims require demonstrable damages beyond what resulted from her own actions. She committed property damage. She threatened you. She came to your home with a weapon. A crowbar, I said. A crowbar, yes. Her own behavior is the proximate cause of what happened to her, not anything you did. However. He paused. That pause was expensive. I could feel it. However, frivolous lawsuits can still be expensive to defend against. The court cost alone, the time required to respond to discovery, expert witnesses potentially, it all adds up. And they know that. So what do? I asked. You let me handle it, he said. But I need you to understand something, this is going to get worse before it gets better. Once a family like this gets lawyers involved, they have financial momentum. They're going to look for every possible angle. They're going to want to depose you, and they're going to be trying to find anything that suggests your story is inconsistent or exaggerated. They're going to dig. He was right. A week later, I received a formal discovery request asking for everything, every text message, every email, every photo of the damage to my car, every note from the building manager about the security footage, medical records from the day of the incident, my phone records for the entire month before the arrest, records of any therapy I'd sought afterward. They wanted my entire life documented and handed over. David assured me it was standard practice. It looks overwhelming, but it's just process, he said. We'll respond to everything. We have 60 days. But having to compile it all, having to go through my phone and read every ugly message I'd received, having to look at photos of my keep car door again and again, having to list out every moment I'd been afraid or angry or heartbroken, it was its own kind of assault. Then came the email from my HR department. I was working at a mid-sized marketing firm, nothing glamorous but stable with decent benefits. I'd worked there for 2 years without incident. The email was formal and brief, HR wanted to meet with me. No explanation. No context. Just a request that I come to the 3rd floor during my lunch break. I knew what this was about before I got there. Someone had been talking. The countersuit was public record. My name was on it. And in a world where everyone Googles everyone, it was only a matter of time before people at my workplace found out that their coworker was embroiled in legal drama. The HR manager, a woman named Patricia whose face never changed, explained that they'd received an inquiry from Madison's lawyer asking whether the company had any records of my workplace performance, any complaints, any behavioral issues. She explained that this was perfectly legal, lawyers do discovery requests on opposing parties' employers all the time. But it meant the company was now involved. We're not taking sides, Patricia said carefully. But we do need to protect the company's interests. I want you to understand that any discussion you have about this situation, with coworkers, in the office, anywhere, could be documented and used in litigation. We'd recommend you keep that in mind. What she was saying, in professional HR language, was, keep your mouth shut, because anything you say can and will be used against you. I walked back to my desk and found my colleague Marcus giving me a look I couldn't quite read. Sympathy? Suspicion? When had people stopped being simple? That night, I sat in my apartment and made a list of what I'd lost so far. A relationship, though arguably I'd already lost that. A best friend, same. My sense of safety in my own home. My sleep. My peace of mind. My faith in people's basic goodness. Possibly my job, if the company decided the liability wasn't worth it. Thousands of dollars in legal fees that I was watching drain from my savings. Any chance of this ever being simple or resolved or truly over. And I understood, for the first time, what Officer Chen had meant. This wasn't about justice anymore. This was about attrition. This was about who could outlast whom. The question was, could I? #Chunk7. The deposition was scheduled for Thursday in mid-November, 2 months after Madison's arrest. David had warned me what to expect, but no amount of preparation could have made me ready for the actual experience of sitting across from Madison's lawyer in a conference room that smelled like old carpet and recirculated air. His name was Richard Castellano, and he had a kind of practiced smile that made me immediately understand why he'd been hired to make my life difficult. He was probably in his late 50s, with gray temples and a suit that cost more than my monthly rent. He brought his paralegal and a court stenographer, and they set up their equipment with the efficient quiet of people who'd done this 100 times before. David sat beside me, and before we started, he leaned over and whispered, "Short answers. Don't volunteer information. If you don't understand a question, say so. If you need a moment, take it. Don't get angry." That last one seemed important. Castellano started softly, almost conversationally. He asked me about my job, my education, my relationship history before Marcus. He asked me about my friendship with Madison, when it started, how close we were, what we'd done together. He asked me to describe, in detail, every time Madison had lied to me or hurt my feelings during our 15-year friendship. He asked me to recall arguments we'd had, times I'd been angry with her, moments where our friendship had been strained. I could see where this was going. He was building a narrative, a friendship that had problems, a narrator who held grudges, a person predisposed to betrayal and conflict. "So you and Madison had fought before," he said, not quite a question. "Yes," I said carefully. "Like any friends." "And when you fought, how did you typically resolve it?" "We talked about it. We apologized. We moved on. But this time, you called the police." "This time, she came to my apartment with a crowbar," I said, keeping my voice level. "That was different." "Was it?" He tilted his head slightly. "Or was it simply the first time you had legal recourse to really punish her for hurting you?" David's hand appeared on the table. "A signal. Don't take the bait." "I called the police because she was threatening me and damaging my property," I said. "Not for revenge." "Not for revenge," he repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me about Marcus, then. About your breakup. Walk me through that timeline." So I did. I told him about the night I found the messages, about the confrontation with Marcus, about the way he'd confessed to multiple affairs with people I knew. I described the feeling of my world fracturing. And I watched Castellano's eyes as I talked, looking for that moment where he found what he needed. It came when he asked, "Did you ever consider that your relationship with Marcus was already troubled before the infidelities?" "No," I said. "You were together 3 years?" "Yes." "And in those 3 years, did you ever worry about his faithfulness?" I hesitated. Because the truth was, there had been moments, small ones, nothing concrete, but moments where I'd wondered if something was off. A late night at the office. A coworker he mentioned too often. Nothing I could prove, nothing I could articulate, but the low-level anxiety that sometimes exists in relationships when you're not quite sure what's real. Sometimes, I admitted. "Normal relationship stuff." "Normal relationship stuff," he echoed. "So you had concerns about his fidelity, and when you discovered he was actually cheating, you were angry not just because of the infidelities themselves, but because your suspicions had been validated?" "I was angry because he cheated on me," I said firmly. "With Madison's help," he continued. "Madison, who was your best friend. And when you found out that Madison had pursued him after your breakup, that's when you decided to retaliate?" "That's not what happened," I said. "Isn't it?" He leaned back in his chair. "You called the police when Madison showed up at your apartment. But she didn't assault you. She didn't enter your apartment. She didn't physically touch you. She keyed your car, a property crime, yes, but not a violent one. And yet you chose to press charges. You chose to escalate. You chose to ensure that she would face criminal consequences. That sounds like retaliation to me." David jumped in. "You're argumentative, Mr. Castellano. She called the police because my client was threatened with a weapon and her property was damaged. That's not retaliation, that's reporting a crime." "A weapon," he said. "A crowbar. Which Madison claims she brought to pry open her own apartment, which she'd locked herself out of earlier that day. There's a locksmith invoice to back that up. But let's say she did use it to key the car. That's still not an assault. That's property damage. And my question remains, why did the reporting party choose to involve law enforcement in what had been, up until that point, a purely personal matter between friends? Because I was terrified, I thought. Because I didn't know what she would do next. Because I'd already been betrayed by 2 people I trusted, and I didn't know if there was a limit to what she'd do to hurt me. But I didn't say that, because I could already hear how Castellano would reframe it. You were emotionally unstable after your breakup, so you overreacted to a drunk woman's visit. The deposition lasted 6 hours. By the end, my head was pounding and my certainty had been replaced by something thinner and more fragile. Castellano had woven my own words into a narrative I barely recognized, one where I was the architect of escalation, where my call to the police was an act of calculated revenge rather than self-preservation. When we finally left the conference room, David put his hand on my shoulder. "You did fine," he said. "Better than fine." But I didn't feel fine. I felt dissected. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, hope the deposition was worth losing your integrity over. Madison's not the villain here, you are asterisk. I blocked it without responding. But I knew there would be others. I knew that Castellano had done his job, which was to make me seem unreasonable, vindictive, unstable. And I knew that somewhere, in some circle of people, that narrative was already spreading. 3 days later, my boss called me into his office. Patricia from HR was there too, sitting in the corner like a witness. "We've made the decision to let you go," my boss said, not meeting my eyes. "It's nothing personal. The company just doesn't feel comfortable continuing this employment arrangement given the ongoing litigation. They were calling it a mutual separation to protect themselves. Severance, 2 weeks' pay, and an exit that would look, to any future employer, exactly like what it was, a termination." On my way out, carrying a box of my things, I understood what was happening. The legal battle wasn't the point anymore. The point was attrition. The point was making me bleed until I bled out. And Madison's family had more resources than I did. #Chunk8. I sat in my apartment for 3 days after losing my job, staring at the severance letter like it was written in a language I couldn't parse. 2 weeks' pay. No reference. No explanation beyond mutual separation. The phrase felt like a punch disguised as a handshake. My savings account had a number in it that made my stomach clench when I did the math. 8 months if I was careful. 6 if I wasn't. And a job market that wasn't going to care that my termination was orchestrated retaliation rather than performance-based. That's when I finally did something I should have done weeks earlier. I called David and asked him to file a counterclaim. For what? He asked carefully. We've got a solid defense on the property damage and threatening behavior charges, but... For harassment, I said. For the text messages. For the coordinated campaign to destroy my reputation and my career. For malicious prosecution if we can prove her family's lawyer is deliberately misrepresenting facts to make me look unstable. There was a long pause. That's a higher burden of proof, David said finally. It's also going to cost more money. I don't have more money, I said. But I have documentation. I have the messages. I have my employment file, which shows 0 disciplinary action before this, and the timing of my termination right after my deposition. I have Castellano asking leading questions designed to make me seem vindictive rather than protecting myself. That's something, isn't it? David made a sound that might have been respect. It's something, he agreed. What neither of us anticipated was that my counterclaim would become the actual story. The local news picked it up first, local woman fights back against harassment campaign, then the legal blog started analyzing Castellano's deposition strategy, and suddenly what had been a simple matter of property damage and public disturbance became a larger narrative about how Madison's defense was being constructed through character assassination rather than actual evidence. David filed a motion to dismiss based on prosecutorial overreach, and when the judge reviewed the deposition transcript, she granted it. Not all the charges, but enough. Enough that Madison's case weakened considerably. But the real turning point came when one of my former coworkers reached out through LinkedIn. Her name was Jennifer, and she'd worked in accounting 2 doors down from me for the past year. She said she'd seen the news story, and she wanted to know if I was planning to sue the company for wrongful termination. I might be, I told her carefully. You should, she said. Because I have emails. From Patricia. From the day after your deposition. She was discussing your termination before your deposition even happened. That's not mutual separation, that's predetermined, and it's retaliatory. I felt something shift inside my chest. Not hope exactly, but the possibility of it. 3 weeks later, I had an employment lawyer, a different one, someone who specialized in wrongful termination cases. His name was Robert Chin, and he had the kind of calm competence that made me believe things could actually work in my favor. This is good, he said, reading through Jennifer's emails. Really good. They predetermined your termination based on the ongoing litigation. That's textbook retaliation, and it's illegal. They also violated your right to pursue a legal claim by terminating you for doing exactly that. Within 2 months, Robert had filed a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and initiated settlement discussions. The company's own lawyers apparently told them fighting this would cost more than settling, and they didn't want the publicity. I got my job back with back pay. I got a formal written apology. And I got a settlement large enough to cover a year of living expenses while I figured out what came next. But something had shifted inside me too. I didn't want my job back. I realized, during the settlement negotiations, that the person I'd been, the one who fit neatly into that corporate hierarchy, wasn't the person I wanted to be anymore. So I told them no thank you, and I took the settlement and I started looking for something different. Meanwhile, Madison's criminal case fell apart. With the character assassination angle failing and the actual evidence being what it was, a drunk woman with a crowbar damaging a car, the prosecution offered a plea deal. Misdemeanor property damage, anger management classes, 100 hours of community service. Madison took it. I found out through David, who received a letter from Castellano indicating his client was withdrawing her countersuit against me. There was no apology, no acknowledgement that any of this had been unfair. Just a quiet retreat. The last piece came 6 months later, when I got a LinkedIn message from someone named Sarah. She said she'd worked with Madison at her new job, 3rd one since the arrest, according to her message, and she wanted to know if I had a reference or could provide details about what had happened. I'm asking because Madison's been making some concerning comments to coworkers about her former best friend, Sarah wrote. I just want to know if this is a pattern. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The fact that this question was being asked at all meant that Madison's actions had consequences beyond the legal system. That her behavior had become her reputation. That the truth, eventually, was catching up with her. 3 weeks after that message, I took a job at a nonprofit that focused on legal aid for people who couldn't afford representation. The pay was less than my corporate job, but the work felt like something. Like purpose, which corporate accounting had never been. I decorated my new apartment, not the one where Madison had shown up with a crowbar, but a different place in a different neighborhood. I went to therapy. I learned to distinguish between healthy caution and paranoia. I rebuilt friendships that had been strained by the drama of it all. And sometimes, when I was alone late at night, I would think about that moment in David's office when he'd asked me what I wanted out of all of this. I'd said I wanted justice. I'd meant I wanted someone to punish Madison, to make her hurt the way she'd hurt me. What I'd actually gotten was something better. I'd gotten my power back. I'd gotten to decide that being betrayed didn't make me disposable. I'd gotten to prove that loyalty and decency meant something, even when other people treated them as worthless. Madison had stolen my boyfriend and my best friend in a single, devastating betrayal. But she couldn't steal my future. She couldn't steal my resilience or my ability to rebuild. And in the end, that's what mattered most.